But after 45 years of progress, funding research, training scientists and physicians, and treating millions of patients, we now have the Army. We now have tools, powerful tools. And with this moonshot, we now have a clear strategy for the road ahead. It matters, folks, because there's a consensus now that we're at an inflection point with science, medicine, and technology all advancing faster than ever and offering real promise. We can't play by the rules of 1971. We didn't have this working for us. For the first time, Japanese researchers have conducted a real-life experiment that shows how some traffic jams appear for no apparent reason. They placed the 22 vehicles on a single track and asked the drivers to cruise around at a constant speed of 30 kilometers an hour. At first, traffic moves smoothly, but soon the distance between cars started to vary and vehicles clumped together at one point on the track. But the jam spread backward around the track, like a shockwave at a rate of about 20 kilometers an hour. Real-life jams move backward at about the same speed.
The growth of the modern state brought with it the development of mass political parties and the emergence of professional politicians. A man whose occupation is the struggle for political power may go about it in two ways. First, a person who relies on their political activities to supply their main source of income is said to live off politics, while a person who engages in full-time political activities, but who doesn't receive an income from it, is said to live for politics. Now, a political system in which recruitment to positions of power is filled by those who live for politics is necessarily drawn from a property-owning elite who are not usually entrepreneurs. However, this is not to imply that such politicians will necessarily pursue policies which are wholly biased towards the interests of the class they originate from.
Almost everyone has heard of the London Stock Exchange, but relatively few know anything about the London Metal and Commodity Exchanges. Yet these markets have a greater influence on world economies because they set global prices for some of the essential raw materials for industry and food manufacture. The LME provides three basic services to the world's non-ferrous metal trade. First, it is a market where large or small quantities of metal of a guaranteed minimum standard can be bought and sold on specific trading days. Second, it acts as a barometer of world metal prices. And third, it is a hedging medium. That is, it can help traders get some protection from price fluctuations that occur for economic, political, or financial reasons.
By 2025, 2/3 of the poor in these regions and 1/3 of the poor in East and South Asia will reside in cities or towns. The nature of urban poverty is more than an income or employment issue and is also characterized by squalid living conditions, risks to life and health from poor sanitation, air pollution, crime and violence, traffic accidents and natural disasters, and the breakdown of traditional familial and communal safety nets. Urban populations are also particularly hard hit by macro-financial shocks, such as the recent crisis in East Asia and Russia. A 25-year-old man who told the police he was tired of life went on a killing rampage in a popular shopping street in central Tokyo on Sunday, plowing his truck into a crowd of pedestrians before stabbing passers-by with a survival knife. 7 people died and 11 were injured. The attack took place shortly after noon on a street that had been closed to vehicles for the day in Akihabara, the main district for electronics in Tokyo and a magnet for fans of Japanese anime and manga comics. For these early generations, Asians in America were largely bachelor communities of temporary sojourners with male-to-female ratios as high as 10-1. Asian American children in those early years were rare. Since 1970, the demography of this population has changed tremendously. In 2002, Asian Americans were slightly more than 4% of the U.S. population. The growth of the Asian American population since 1970 is due in great part of the elimination of exclusionary immigration policies that existed before 1965, implementation of new refugee statutes directly flowing from the Vietnam War, and the rise of second and subsequent U.S.-born generations. In 1970, there were 1.5 million Asian Americans. The police identified the attacker as Tomohiro Kato, who was living by himself in a small apartment in Shizuoka, just west of Tokyo. According to reports in the Japanese news media, Mr. Kato told the police that he had grown tired of life, hated the world, and had gone to Akihabara to kill people. Anyone was okay, he told the police, according to the reports. Japanese television showed the police holding Mr. Kato on the ground after the attack. He was dressed in a black t-shirt, off-white trousers, and a jacket, and was wearing sneakers. The police said the attack began around 12:30 p.m. when Mr. Kato drove a white two-ton rental truck into the street in a zigzag pattern, hitting several people. He then got out of the truck and began yelling and stabbing passers-by, including a police officer. Japanese television displaying images captured on cell phones by witnesses showed bodies scattered in the area.
Day, who beheld with wonder how much he ate upon all occasions, when his dinner was to his taste, could not easily conceive what he must have meant by hunger. And not only was he remarkable for the extraordinary quantity which he eat, but he was, or affected to be, a man of very nice discernment in the science of cookery. He used to descend critically on the dishes which had been at table where he had dined or supped, and to recollect very minutely what he had liked. I remember when he was in Scotland, he praised Gordon's palates, a dish of palates at the Honourable Alexander Gordon's, with a warmth of expression which might have done honor to more important subjects. As for Maclaurin's imitation of a made dish, it was wretched attempt. He about the same time was so much displeased with the performances of a nobleman's French cook that he exclaimed with vehemence, "I'd throw such a rascal into the river," and then proceeded to alarm a lady at whose house he was to sup by the following manifesto of his skill: "I, madame, who lived at a variety of good tables, am a much better judge of cookery than any person who has a very tolerable cook, but lives much at home, for his palate is gradually adapted to the taste of his cook. Whereas, madame, in trying by a wider range, I can more exquisitely judge when invited to dine, even with an intimate friend. He was not pleased if something better than a plain dinner was not prepared for him. I have heard him say on such an occasion, 'This was a good dinner enough, to be sure, but it was not a dinner to ask a man to.' On the other hand, he was wont to express, with a great glee, his satisfaction when he had been entertained quite to his mind.